Checking up my business partner.
Hey, Fatty McFat.
Still waiting on that.
See what you got.
Hey, Miles.
What?
The movie begins by introducing three school troublemakers, led by a student named Miles. Their main purpose at school is to bully those they see as weak. One of their frequent targets is a chubby boy named Jimmy Mulligan. Despite facing Miles' constant harassment, Jimmy never fights back. Fortunately, he has two loyal friends, Andy and Bobby, who always support him, as well as loving and caring parents. One morning, while Jimmy and his friends are on their way to school, they unexpectedly cross paths with Miles and his gang. Miles demands that Jimmy hand over $100, an amount far beyond Jimmy's means, given his modest background. Even after Jimmy insists he doesn't have that kind of money, Miles refuses to listen and continues pressuring him. Besides tormenting Jimmy, Miles also frequently bullies Bobby, particularly for his more feminine mannerisms. After humiliating Bobby in front of the entire class, Miles leaves, and Jimmy tries to comfort his friend. To cheer them up, Jimmy invites Andy and Bobby to lunch, offering to treat them. While they are surprised by how much Jimmy eats, they never make fun of his large appetite. Later, Andy and Bobby try to set Jimmy up with a girl named Adrian, noticing that she often steals glances at him during lunch. After school, Miles confronts Jimmy again, demanding the money. But this time, Jimmy firmly stands his ground, stating that he neither has nor owes Miles anything. Enraged, Miles attacks Jimmy on the side of the road. Just as the beating is about to escalate, an elderly man arrives and threatens to report Miles to the police. Startled, Miles flees. The old man, introducing himself as Mr. Action, helps Jimmy and takes him home to tend to his injuries. At Mr. Action's house, Jimmy learns that the kind old man was once a world heavyweight boxer. Inspired, Jimmy begs him for boxing lessons so he can stand up to Miles. Though Mr. Action is willing to help, he admits he is too old to train Jimmy himself but promises to find someone who can. Later, he takes Jimmy home and informs his parents about the attack. Grateful for Mr. Action's kindness, they allow Jimmy to train in boxing and even accompany him to Manny's boxing gym. At the gym, Mr. Action explains Jimmy's situation to Manny, who agrees to train him on the condition that he stays committed, as boxing is demanding. Jimmy begins training under Manny's guidance, while Mr. Action keeps a close eye on his progress. During one conversation, Jimmy tells Mr. Action about Miles' relentless demand for the $100. Mr. Action devises a plan. Jimmy should counter Miles' demand by offering $200 instead, but only if given a month to prepare. He believes that within that time, Jimmy can develop the skills necessary to defeat Miles, avoiding the need to pay altogether. The next day, Jimmy follows Mr. Action's advice when Miles comes to collect the money. Though initially hesitant due to the long wait, Miles eventually agrees to give Jimmy a month. Temporarily relieved, Jimmy no longer has to deal with Miles' harassment. However, during that afternoon's boxing session, Jimmy seems drained and unmotivated. When questioned, he claims to be exhausted, but Manny quickly sees through it, realizing that Jimmy's struggle is more mental than physical. When Jimmy arrived home, his father noticed his declining enthusiasm for training. Instead of forcing him to continue, he left the decision in Jimmy's hands but expressed his hope that one day, Jimmy would be able to teach his own children self-defense so they wouldn't have to endure the same hardships. Reflecting on his father's words, Jimmy reignited his determination and committed himself to training seriously. The next day, Miles and his gang once again harassed Jimmy and his friends, even going so far as to physically attack Bobby in front of a crowd. Seeing Bobby crying alone, Jimmy tried to console him, but Bobby was convinced they were powerless against Miles. However, Jimmy disagreed and confidently told Bobby that he had a plan to defeat Miles and put an end to their bullying. Upon reaching home, Jimmy wasted no time and rushed to Manny's boxing gym on his bicycle, something he usually relied on Mr. Action for since the gym was far away. Day after day, Jimmy trained relentlessly, pushing himself harder than ever. At school, Jimmy confided in Andy about his training and his mission to defeat Miles. At that moment, Adrian approached him, and the two made plans to go on a date. During a party at a friend's house, Jimmy and Adrian discovered a deep connection through their conversations, leading them to start a romantic relationship. However, their moment was interrupted when Eddie, one of Miles' cronies, began provoking them. Now brimming with confidence, Jimmy stood up to Eddie and quickly shut him down. As time passed, the day arrived when Jimmy had to face Miles. Determined not to be blackmailed or bullied any longer, he woke up that morning with an unshakable sense of confidence. When he got to school, Miles wasted no time in confronting him, threatening to harm his friends if he didn't comply. While in the restroom, Jimmy met a student named Vinny, who learned about his ongoing rivalry with Miles. Knowing that Jimmy had been training at Manny's gym, Vinny encouraged him and wished him luck. Unbeknownst to them, Eddie had been eavesdropping and immediately reported their conversation to Miles. Acting on Miles' orders, Eddie contacted a notorious troublemaker named Glassjaw Billy and arranged for him to come to school and challenge Jimmy. Word of the impending showdown spread across the school, and soon, everyone was eager to see who would emerge victorious. Confidently, Jimmy confronted Miles and his gang. Already aware that Jimmy would no longer cave to his demands, Miles devised a plan to use Glassjaw against him. However, Vinny acted fast, sending his allies to intercept and kidnap Glassjaw, forcing Miles to fight Jimmy alone. As the fight began, Jimmy initially struggled against Miles' attacks. But he refused to back down, dodging Miles' strikes and landing a powerful punch to his face. Realizing that Miles was losing, his friends attempted to jump in, but Andy and Bobby stepped up, refusing to let Jimmy fight alone. Together, they stood against the Bullies and ultimately defeated them. Unbeknownst to Jimmy, videos of the fight quickly spread across social media, capturing the attention of the local community and even a television network.